Welcome to Tea and Talk. I'm your host, Olivia Boughton. Today, I'm joined by Tom Leypoldt, Executive Director here at PEGTV. Tom, thank you so much for joining me.
It's always a pleasure to be on any kind of show with you, Olivia.
We've had that experience before, right?
We have, yeah.
Well, before we get talking, we start with some tea.
Okay.
So the tea set that I have here today actually belongs to my great aunt, Tess Bartlett. So thank you, Tessie, for loaning us this lovely tea set. And this set actually came from Japan. So it's quite an interesting little set. It's very iridescent, sweet little set. And you told me a little bit about the kinds of teas that you like, so I decided to serve chai today.
Okay, good.
Which I thought might be nice as well, because it's a little chilly outside the studios here. So chai is a nice warming tea. And it's a black tea that has lots of different spices in it. Varies depending on the region or the company even that's making it, but usually things like cinnamon, clove, cardamom, ginger, those kind of warming winter spices. So usually it's served with some cream or milk, which I have a little bit of here, and honey or sugar. So I don't know if you like any of those things.
I'll take milk.
You'll take milk, okay.
I hope you have insurance on your cups and saucers and stuff.
Yeah, okay, if it breaks.
No, I can't be responsible for items on the set.
Oh boy. Well, we won't think about that. We'll think positively. Right. Okay, so a little of this. No honey or sugar for you?
Just milk will be fine, cream or whatever.
Yep, how's that look?
Very good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. And a little for me as well. And I think I will do some honey in there. Be kind of traditional with my mixing it up.
This is probably the nicest dish I've ever had in my hand.
Oh boy. Well, let's see, put that in there. All right, have a sip. Tell me what you think.
Delicious.
Delicious.
Very good.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
We like to hear that. So as I mentioned, you are Executive Director here at PEG.
Yes.
So many people in the community know you and have maybe seen you in other capacities as well on stage as a comedian, but maybe don't know a whole lot about you.
Right.
So I'm going to start by asking you to tell us a little bit about where you grew up.
Well, I grew up in Danby. Both my parents lived in Philadelphia and worked for Pearl S. Buck, the famous author who won the Nobel Peace Prize. Her most famous work was The Good Earth.
Yes.
And she bought all of the center of Danby basically in 1969.
Really?
All the buildings, much of which were abandoned, and she had these hopes of restoring it and putting in little shops and a restaurant. And she approached my parents and asked them if they'd like to raise the children out of the city and move to the country. And of course, my parents jumped at it.
Wow.
So we moved to Danby from Philadelphia in the late 60s, early 70s. I'm not quite sure on the year.
How old were you?
I was just a toddler.
Yeah,
I mean,
little thing.
I have memories of Philadelphia, but they're visits back.
I see.
don't remember actually being there, born there.
Yeah.
And Pearl Buck passed away in 1973, but my parents decided to stay. They both found work, and so I stayed. I grew up in Danby, attended Curry Memorial School, which is still down there, and later Mill River. And once I graduated from Mill River, I went to Vermont Tech first and studied engineering, and decided that wasn't the career path for me.
It was not for you. Okay.
Not much room for a sense of humor in the engineering realm. So,
right. Very serious work.
Right, it was.
Very serious work.
So I transferred to Castleton and decided to start a career in communications or study communications. And then I, of course, met Terry J in a radio class, and that's kind of what sealed it for me.
Really?
You know, I had an internship at WJJR in the summer of '93, and I just saw how much fun Terry was having, and he interacting with the community and having fun on the air. And I chose TV because Terry had to get up too early in the morning. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, That's an early in the morning kind of job. Although some kind of TV is also early in the morning, right? Newscasters are up way before dawn. Yeah. Not for me either.
So he was a big influence, you know, and it really kind of takes that when you're trying to choose a career path, because between ages 17 and 25, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Like, you really just kind of venture out there and try things and see what you're like and what you're good at. You know, the comedy came later, but I still decided that I wasn't funny enough to quit my day job or not get a day job.
Well, we're lucky for that, that you're here and doing all this good work, so that's good. Yeah, but what you said about not really knowing what you wanted to do in that period of life where I think many young people are trying to figure it out, and having a role model that helps to guide you and is somebody that, you know, encourages you especially in what you're good at or what you're naturally inclined towards, can be life-changing for a young person.
Yeah, and you don't realize it. I mean, I didn't realize it at the time. That Terry was actually having an influence over me. And, I mean, there are other factors too, but I really just his personality and his persona, and I just love that he loves to do stuff for the community. I mean, he seemed like he never went home. I mean, he was always involved in something and helping the community, and everybody knew him, first name basis, and so it was just fun. I mean, I had to get up early for that internship too, but it was fun. I had a fun time there, and it was just like a TV show in itself, the way all the staff interacted and the way people came in, and you know,
reality TV, if it had existed back then.
Or that show in the 70s, WKRP. It was kind of like that. Everybody had a dynamic personality, and it was in the communications field, so I liked it. I liked that.
Yeah. So when did you start kind of working with PEG? Like, what's the origin of that?
Yeah, that I just decided I was interested in that, and I took the volunteer course, which we still offer. You can come in and learn how to use the equipment and record your own show, or record a sporting event or a church service. So I took that course in 1993, and one of the board members that was here at the time, Joe Corsell, was interested in covering flag football. And he asked me if I'd help him, so that's where I got involved. Did a few flag football games and a few other things, and then a part-time position came up in 1995, which I applied for. Shortly after getting that, hired by Mike Valentine. He offered me a full-time position, so in 1995 I went full-time, and I've been here ever since.
Gosh. And all thanks to Terry.
That's
to
correct.
some degree.
Yeah, so he created a monster, you know.
Well, I don't know if I'd put it quite like that, but.
And we've had the pleasure of working together through many different arenas and nonprofit agencies. He's been in here several times. I've been at the radio station several times. We've done things in the community together. The West Rutland Variety Show, that was a blast to be on stage with him. In 2017, both of us won a Community Media Award from Brock at the same time.
Wow.
So that was like really neat to have it come full circle.
Cool.
And
Wow. Yeah, Terry was a guest on my show already.
I saw that.
Yes. So, you know, we go back a long ways too.
You do.
So I'm going to switch gears back to childhood in Danby and just ask if there's any fun memories you have of growing up in Danby.
It was actually a great place to grow up. We lived mostly next to a farm, so there was acres and acres of playground. We were there all the time, sliding down the hill in the wintertime. You know, I had a sugar house right across the street, so we could go there where they were boiling. It was just a Norman Rockwell type of existence. I mean, everybody was friendly and nice. You didn't have to worry about trouble, and your mother just told you to be home before the street lights come on, and there was one.
There was one.
So I had
very different experience than if you had been in Philly.
Right. Oh yeah, and I often think of that too. I often wonder what would happen if we didn't move out of Philadelphia, what career path I would have taken, or what would have happened if I would have found stand-up comedy. But you know, Danby was in the 70s. There were some challenges. I mean, because there weren't the things in place like that. I certainly could have done without the square dancing.
No offense to any square dancers out there.
it just wasn't for me. I really didn't glean anything off of that, and
Yeah.
I didn't.
We all have our own,
Right.
you know, strengths.
And I still wake up in the middle of the night sometime, and I'm like, oh, glad I'm not square dancing.
Ooh, nightmares. That's not good.
Well, no, it was a nice place to grow up. I mean, it was quaint, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a little tough in the winter driving to Rutland when you needed stuff and things.
Yeah.
But I made several friends there, some of which were still close, and
Yeah.
so a nice country way to grow up, and
Yeah.
still go to Philadelphia and experience the city sometimes. So
Yeah.
kind of a nice mix.
Yeah, yeah. I think, you know, what you're saying about kind of quaint, you know people, that kind of community feeling is true of a lot of Vermont, you know, where you know people on the street, and you know their parents or their kids or whatever relatives, and there is that community aspect that is very
Right.
comforting.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, a lot of my stand-up material is based on, you know,
Yeah.
growing up in Danby with a disability, but of course it's all exaggerated. You
Yes.
know,
Well,
it's just based on little
most
nuggets of
comedy
things
is,
that happened, and you know, you know, they're just how it turned out. Of course, you write material on what you've experienced, and that was my experience. So.
So tell me how the comedy aspect started in your life.
I think that I'm convinced that it was my dad's influence first, because my dad was brilliant. He could be on a bus or a subway and just make strangers laugh. He just had that natural ability inside of him. One-liners constant, always, at home, in public. You could never get one up on him. So I think there's something was in there, in the genetics. And as I got older and got out in the public, most of the jobs I ever had were in public, mostly retail. And
Yeah.
so I had this job at the Great Rutland Mall, which I loved.
Oh,
I
gosh.
worked in the record store there,
mall.
which was a wonderful experience. I just enjoyed being there, and it was all family, and everybody in the stores knew each other. And I just, you know, and you're public, you're interacting
yeah.
with the customers, and you're having fun, and you get to hear music. So a couple of staff members there, I mean, this is right out of high school, started to notice that it was a little funnier than the average bear.
Okay.
You know, and it takes a lot. It takes a lot of coaxing for you to even start to believe that. And there was one staff member in particular, she just kept on me at it. And then, you know, you got to get on stage and try it. They think you have an ability, and of course you don't believe that. You know?
No.
So one night, the comedy club did open in Rutland on Center Street, and it's owned by who is now Representative Paul Clifford. And
Oh,
so I
wow.
heard about that, and I was like, I'll just go and see what it's like. I had no intentions of all of getting on stage. Just want to go and see what it's like. So I went, and the headliner got done with his act, and MC came on stage and said, okay, it's time for open mic night. Not me. I'm
Yeah.
not doing that. And coincidentally, a friend that I graduated high school with was working there.
Okay.
And very fond of her, and she came over and said, I'll buy you a beer if you get up and tell one joke. So just because of
Bribery.
that,
Yeah.
I had nothing planned. I didn't have any material at that time, and I'm just like, you know what? If people are seeing something that I'm not seeing, I owe it at least to them to get up and
Yeah, give it a
try
try. Yeah.
Terrified. All I can remember is that I could hear my breath over the microphone. But I said a couple things and
Yep.
got a smattering
Okay.
of chuckles.
Yep.
And of course, I didn't win. But when I got home, I'm like, you know, I bet you if I put some stuff together, I might be able to do better.
Right.
So I put some stuff together and went back 2 weeks later. And I never lost an open mic again.
Oh my gosh.
And then Paul Clifford came over to me and he says, would you mind just hosting the show on a regular basis? I'm like,
Yeah.
sure, I would love that.
Wow.
And another amazing coincidence, the first comedian that I ever brought up on stage there as a headliner was Joe Rogan.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You're kidding.
No, he wasn't famous, of course, yet.
Wow.
But that was the first guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez. Small world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So that's how it started. Basically got coaxed into it to
Wow.
to satisfy the nags, basically, of
Mm-hmm.
nagging me of trying to do it, and I ended up being fairly good at it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then so right? You won lots of open mics, you're saying, and then you hosted. And then I know you as winning at the really big show.
Right. Yeah, that's where we met.
That's
the
where
really
we
big
met.
show, 1996. You won your category. I won mine. And that was a great learning experience for me because you have to get out of the club mentality.
Right.
You know?
That's a different thing.
It is.
Right. Yeah. When
Yep.
you're in a place where people are, drinking and it's kind of that, late night sort of atmosphere, that's a different kind of joke.
It really
right?
is.
And
Yeah.
different delivery, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Than a show, right? Which is kind of a variety of different acts, and it's a competition, of course, and you have a wider age range,
Right.
Little kids all the way to seniors, and you have to think of jokes that appeal to all of them.
Right.
Which I'm
Which
sure was
made
hard.
me better. It made me a better comic because you can't. And I was never big on the kind of what people think of as nightclub comedy. I was never good at that. I always felt that if my mother was there, I want to be comfortable with that.
That's probably a good way of gauging things.
Yeah,
right?
and if I look
Could I
back
say this in front of Mom?
Right, because she's going to find out eventually, and I just felt that coming out of me, that's not going to sell.
Yeah.
I just didn't think
Yeah.
that was my filter. And
Yep.
another crazy coincidence that was career altering for me. A lady came to Danby looking for my mom many years after Pro Buck had passed away, and she said, she went to the town library and said, I'm looking for Phyllis Leypoldt. And she said, I want to talk to her about the Pro Buck Foundation. I'm with the Pro Buck Foundation. And so the librarian called my mom and said, there's a lady here who wants to talk to you about Pro Buck. And she's like, well, tell her where I live. So the lady came and met my mom, and it ended up being Dom DeLuise's wife.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So they got talking, and my mom told Carol DeLuise that her son was in stand-up comedy, and he's like, well, he's got to come down and meet my husband.
Oh my gosh,
And
did you?
I did.
Oh
and I
my
thought it was just
gosh.
going to be a one-off thing.
Yeah.
But once Dom found out that I was in stand-up comedy, he stayed in touch with me for the rest of his life.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
And he helped me.
Yeah.
One day he's like, bring your tapes down. I want to look at your act. And he helped me.
Yeah.
We sat there, which was terribly nerve-wracking.
Oh my gosh,
I mean,
right, to be
sitting
judged.
there with this internationally famous actor, comedian, and he's putting VHS tapes of my
You're like,
stupid stuff.
right, like sinking in your
Yeah.
chair, like, oh,
Yeah.
this is
But
bad.
he ripped it apart just like I wanted him to, and he
Yep.
structured it better and told me what to keep and what to take out, and I was totally grateful for that.
Yeah.
And he would contact me out of the blue, and I just thought of something you should add or something like that. And I'm like, fantastic.
Yeah.
It was really helpful and encouraging to know that here's this guy that doesn't need to give me the time of day.
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, but he sees something and he's probably
Yeah.
enjoying helping me, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll take it.
Well, and I'm sure that your attitude probably was encouraging to him too, right? You didn't go into it like, well, I know everything there is to know.
Right.
I don't need your advice. Just look at how great I am. Instead, you went into it with, please, help me.
Right.
Give me the harsh critiques. Tell me how I can improve. And that, I'm sure for him, felt like it was worth his time because you were an eager student as opposed to just, a show off.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing he told me that I'll remember for the rest of my life, because I kept asking him, well, like, when's the nerve-wracking part of it going to go away? When you finally like calm down and like go out there not nervous? He's like, never.
Right.
Never. And you
I
you
do.
perform, you know what that's like. And I'm like,
do.
well, that's kind of why. And I said, why? He said, because if the nervousness goes away, it means you don't care. He said, it's good to be nervous, not frightened. Don't be frightened, but
Right.
it's good to be nervous.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, there's a fine line,
Yeah.
between them. And, I definitely feel like I relate to that. I've thought that someday, when I was much younger, I thought someday I won't be nervous anymore. And I've heard very similar things from people. The nerves are good. It means that you're invested in what
Right.
you're doing, that you care about what you're doing. And there is a difference between being frightened and being nervous. And usually when you're nervous, you get out there, you start your act, and then you feel better, right? It kind of goes away. You forget that you were nervous and you're just in that moment
Right.
and enjoying it, as opposed to when you're fearful, and then you're just petrified the whole time.
Well, and I've noticed you don't change. And like the day of a performance, when I run into you, you're just Olivia. But when I mean, at least I perceive that. But
Okay.
when
Well,
the days
good.
that I have a performance, I feel like I'm a different guy. I'm like, well, I can't go to the store. I can't go to the gym. I don't want to waste any thought on anything else.
Yeah.
You know, that gets better too. I've gotten better over the years of like, well, you got to function. You
Yeah.
can't just sit here until showtime and do nothing.
Yeah, yes, and
know what I mean?
sometimes I do, because sometimes when you do that, it's worse for
Yeah.
the nerves,
Yeah.
right? And you have more time to sit there and think and run through, and then you overthink, and then you just kind of sabotage yourself sometimes.
Well, and I always felt, because you sing, and I always felt like singers have it a little harder, because if I mess up, I can always pick a different route or come up with something and cover it. Music is more mathematical. And
Yes,
if
it's
you're
more
missing a number
structured.
or you skip something,
Yep.
people are going to know right away.
Yep.
You know?
Usually, I mean, sometimes you can fudge it, but
Yeah.
it's harder.
Right, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I noticed too in a lot of the talent shows that I've done, people forgive if someone plays a violin poorly or they sing poorly, they still get applause. If you do bad comedy, they'll start
Silence.
ripping you apart
Yep.
right there.
Right. It's either silent or you get boos.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Have you ever been booed?
Probably. Yeah. You know, you tend not to hear when you're up there. I don't really.
True.
There's certain things I hear, certain things I don't hear, but I've been heckled. And this is another thing I learned from Dom. I told him about this offer that I got in a club at White River Junction that was seemed like it was just all like pickup trucks and guns, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think I'm going to do that. And he's like, you're doing it. I'm like, why? He goes, because you're going to learn something. You do the things that make you uncomfortable and push you past your comfort zone.
Yeah. Good advice.
And I was afraid he was going to yell at me, so I did it. And it was bad. I mean, the comedian that went up before me, they got her crying. She's coming off stage, and I'm like, Sherry, I'm sorry, this place is just rugged. And she's like, I hope you do better than I do. And I didn't want to go out.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to subject myself to that, but you have to.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So I went out and just abandoned everything. I'm like, you guys aren't doing that to me. I'm not. You're not going to do it. So
Yep.
if you want to spar and go back and forth, or you want me to do my act, but
Yep.
I'm not. You're going to get me crying. So that was pretty bad. I mean,
Yeah.
eventually I won them over because I think they respected.
Right. That you were like,
yeah.
nope, this is not going to happen with me. I'm taking control. Yeah.
And one of the things that I said that was risky, but I think it got them going, I said, is there anybody in here that doesn't smell like a snowmobile?
Oh, man.
And they're like, whoa, but this guy has
Right.
got some ammunition.
Right. So I'm willing to use it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And, you know, sometimes you got to do that because you can't lose control. You know, if you get up there and lose control,
Right.
it's not
Then
enjoyable.
Tomatoes get thrown at you,
Right,
and
yeah.
it's a mess.
But I've never had it where I decided I was never going to do it anymore.
Yeah.
You know, you're
Yeah.
going to have rough spots.
Yeah.
Nobody gets it right every time.
Yeah.
Not everything is going to be funny in someone else's eyes. I mean, it's just part
True.
of, you know.
Yeah, yeah, humor. I mean, it's like any kind of entertainment or art, or you know, it's so subjective.
Right.
And what's funny to someone is not funny to someone else,
Right.
and vice versa. And there's not necessarily a formula to figure that out. You know, what strikes a person as funny. I
Right.
mean, it seems random to me. You know.
Well, for instance, you know, one of my jokes is, you know, when I was growing up in Danby, we didn't have cell phones. If you wanted to find out what your family was doing, you just listened to the scanner. Well, one of my relatives didn't like that joke.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, so I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's funny, and I got laughs when I told it. But,
Right. Well, and like you said earlier, right? Sometimes it's exaggeration,
Yeah.
right? You're not literally gonna hear what your family's doing on the scanner, right? But that kind of.
Not every night.
Not every night. Touche. Yeah, but you know, with humor, sometimes people get that, and sometimes they don't. So, I think it is more risky, I would say, than that's certainly what I do on stage. You know, either people like the kind of music I sing or they don't. And if they don't, they're not going to come and listen to me sing. So,
Right.
you know, you kind of have that buffer to begin with. Whereas with comedy, I think everybody wants to laugh. So you go to a comedy show, but you don't necessarily know who's, you know, what the style is of the comedian, unless it's a famous person that
Right.
you've heard before.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you go to a local event or an event that has multiple comedians, there's going to be jokes that are not funny to certain people and are super funny to somebody else. So.
Yeah, and it seems like nowadays there's certain sensitivities that weren't there before.
Sure.
I mean, there are jokes that I told in the 90s that I would never repeat.
Sure.
You know, so you
Yeah.
have to kind of adjust to the sensibilities of the times.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Culture shifts and, you know, society changes. So, yeah, right. You have to adapt to that if you want to stay engaged and stay
Right.
relevant to what's going on.
And still stay true to myself, you know.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yep, absolutely.
a lot of the reason why things are funny is because it's risky to say. And that's
True, true. Right. Sometimes it's, I can't believe that person said that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know, I thought that in my mind, but I can't believe it.
Right,
Somebody
yeah.
said it out loud.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, this job here helps a lot because I'm interacting with the public, and you'll ask any staff member. Occasionally, I'll test material out on a staff member,
And they're like,
knowingly, or sometimes
Right.
I'll try to camouflage it and just see what kind of the
Right, see-
reaction. Yeah.
see what happens organically.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure sometimes it's successful and sometimes not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, we've been in enough shows together, and I enjoy doing that. I enjoy doing the talent part of it, especially when the show benefits
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Because it's easy for me. I don't have to carry any equipment. I can just show up and do my thing.
Yeah.
If it brought an extra $10, $20, $30, $40, $50 to that show, you know, because those people wanted to see me,
Right.
it makes me feel good.
Yeah.
That my material's doing some good in
Yeah.
the community, and
Yeah.
you know, and I enjoy it. You get to meet a lot of other talented people like yourself. I mean, we've known
Thank
each
you.
other going on 30 years now. So yeah, it's just kind of neat.
That's supposed to talk about my age, right? I
Well-
was an infant when we met.
You were. I think you were in second grade at that show.
Yeah. No. But we'll pretend.
Yeah.
We'll pretend. Yeah. It has been a long time. It has been a long time of
And
knowing each
you're
other.
busier than I am. I'm kind of a like take it as it comes kind of thing. I don't really pursue like you do. I don't really.
Yeah.
You know, you're at it all the time. You hone your craft and you sing a lot
Yeah.
at various different things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, you know, I think, you know, not to bring it up, but COVID did change a lot of, you know, how those kinds of community activities look now. So, you know, for me, there's certain things I do that are easier than I think what you do, and finding opportunities to get up on stage in those kinds of venues, because it's just, you know, we're still readjusting, I think, to
Yeah, we are.
what life looks like now,
Right.
and what, you know, community entertainment looks like now. So, but that's part of life, right? It's always changing. Things are always
Series of adjustments.
a series of adjustments. So we're running out of time already, which I can't believe. And I want to ask you a question I've tried to ask all my guests, and that is, what is it that you love about this area of Vermont, Rutland area, and being here, working here, living here? What do you love?
My job is very gratifying because I feel like it does make a difference in the community, and it clearly does.
Yes.
I mean, people come right out and say that it does. But,
Yes.
I love Vermont. I love the 4 seasons, the moods of this changing season, and Rutland itself is very gracious. I mean, they'll step up to help. I mean,
Yes.
we've seen that in all the shows that we've been in together. And
Yeah.
Rutland has compassion. This area has a lot of compassion. And I met a lot of friends here, and I wouldn't move back. I hope to retire here and stay here.
Yeah.
It's just a giving community, a warm community. You meet a lot of nice people.
You do.
Yep.
You do. I love what you said, that Rutland has a lot of compassion.
It does. It
That's
really
beautiful.
does. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Tom, for coming on and chatting with me and sharing
Sure.
some tea
Yeah.
today. And thanks to all of our viewers who shared this time with us. And I will see you next time on Tea and Talk.